After seeing part one of Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon, I thought it would be best if I saw both movies and then did a workshop on it. So in preparation for part two coming out, I rewatched Rebel Moon part one and made some notes. About 10 hours later, I realized I had way too many notes, and what I was gonna have to do is break this one video idea up into 3 videos. So this is gonna be my review for Rebel Moon part one. I was really excited to see a darker, grittier Star Wars sort of clone. As someone who likes fanfiction, alternate universes, all that kind of stuff, I totally believe that we could take something sort of kind of like Star Wars and make it unique and fun and its own thing over here. Star Wars as a universe has a lot of fertile ground to make something a little darker and grittier, and personally I love that there's going to be a female lead in Rebel Moon. I think Korra looks great in the trailers, I think her serious face is fun, she's got a great costume, and the idea that she's going to take on like a mentor Obi-Wan sort of role versus like your general Luke Skywalker role is also very interesting to me. Also, I think Zack Snyder made some really interesting sets and places. His combining of like practical effects and CGI is working for me. Feels like an actual place. Feels like it would be fun and interesting to explore, and like there's a lot of diverse cultures, different things that could be playing off each other to make a compelling story. I'm also a pretty big fan of most of the costume design. It makes people feel like they come from really different places and have different values. It feels like this clothing is signifying something about the person, and I like the way that romance and sex is kind of tackled within the storyline. It's just a thing that exists in this world. There's no purity culture, but it's not like a hypersexualized culture either. Just something that people can choose to engage in or not, and there's not judgment associated with that. It can be a romantic thing, it can be a lusty thing. Like the farm world we start on here, they are doing a quote-unquote ritual, which I think is more in jest than anything else, suggesting that people go ahead and hook up for the night for a quote-unquote good harvest. And people openly talk about their exploits and their lack of exploits. All of that is fine and normal. And the mother world too, they encourage their soldiers to take on a lover because they realize that will give them like more bonding and personal investment in conflicts. So there's none of this like prudishness, and it seems very even-handed on like men's sexual conquest versus female sexual conquest. And I love the hint of the cosmic horror, creepy tentacle stuff. The first time we get this is in the bar scene where there's like this alien creature that has tentacles that connects to a human host to communicate with Korra. We also see some tentacle stuff on the ship for the mother world. I like some more expansion on it than we're currently getting, like more creepiness, more unnerving stuff, more information, but that little hint is kind of like exciting, and it's more details like this that I think could have really elevated this movie, made the world feel more lived in and diverse than it currently is. I like the slow-mo scenes and all the stereotypical Zack Snyder-esque kind of things. There are a few times in the movie where it feels like a little too much or a little heavy-handed, but generally speaking, I love slow camera pans, I love the slow motion, I love where we're heavily focused in on one character speaking and then the focus shifts to be to the character in the back who's now speaking. All of that direction and stuff really works for me. I think it's enjoyable. I like the style, and it is a heavily stylized way to film. Honestly, I love the Anthony Hopkins robot. The design of this robot is awesome. I love that it has like little light up eyes and that its cheeks blush or like light up when someone is touching its face. I love the dramatic voice that Anthony Hopkins gives it. His backstory is really cool. And the turn that the robot does, starting off as a pacifist only robot because it's failed its mission to save the princess, to utilizing violence to kill his leader, specifically to save this one girl he made sort of like a friendship bonding connection with, and implying that he's willing to fight for this village when he was no longer willing to fight for the empire. Great character arc kind of stuff. Entirely in character work, and we're going to start by analyzing the bad guys. I'm not entirely sure I understand why the bad guys are bad. Don't get me wrong, in the opening exposition we learn that the mother world was a monarchy, their monarchs were killed, and now they have like a dictatorship, and the mother world has colonized a ton of planets and is using them for resources. But here's the thing, like both monarchies and colonization are things that happen in our world here on Earth. The events themselves were bad. We don't necessarily think of of the empire as a whole as a bad, and we don't necessarily want to take down the empire. We just want them to change some of their ways in some elements. And in fact, sometimes like coming together as a massive conglomerate is a good thing. Like if you look at the EU, the European Union, they're not a monarchy, right? And they're not all one union, but they have like standardized money across different countries. They have a couple of rules they all follow. They make immigration easier. So like a larger governmental system like this across a bunch of independent planets could be a good thing. And we really just don't know enough about the mother world to know how they're ruling. Right now we're on the outer edges, but we see that there is a king ruling his whole planet over here who's also part of the mother world. So it seems like at least on the outskirts, the mother world tends to leave a lot of planets alone. Of course, we're getting conflicting reports because Korra talks about how the mother world destroyed everyone and everything on her planet, and the grain planet, they plan to take all the harvest and leave those people to starve to death. That like wiggle room makes you wonder if it's a policy problem, if it's bad actors, if they've gotten too large, and so there's brutalization in some parts and total freedom in others. None of which would necessarily matter in this movie if they had kept it insular, stuck to the grain planet, because we could have all agreed that taking all the harvest and leaving the farmers to starve was bad, and who cares about the larger politics, whatever going on. But this movie keeps insisting I care about the big overarching universe politics. It starts me off with an opening exposition about them. We keep hearing about this princess girlie who, FYI, is not in the opening monologue. There's these rebels, we don't understand why they're rebelling. There's all these people we're collecting who have in some way, shape, or form been wronged by the mother world, but we never really get into exactly how or why, so we don't know the mother world's crimes. Just that they are ambiguously bad and costume-wise coded as Nazis. But we don't see them exterminating diversity necessarily, so like even their costuming as Nazis feels very heavy-handed and like not 100% aligned with who they are or what they do. And looking at individual bad guys here, like Admiral Atticus Noble, he's just like an awkward doofus in a lot of his scenes. He starts out like hugging the leader Sidra on the grain planet. He has a lot of long, awkward pauses. He is vaguely menacing, like he could turn on a dime. His chosen weapon is a big stick that he beats people to death with, which feels very strange in a PG-13 movie that doesn't show blood. And even more strange in a world where there is like ships that can destroy everything from orbit, there's guns, there's lasers, there's all this other stuff, and this guy only carries around a stick. Like, it's just not that menacing unless you're in very close range with him. And Atticus Noble is supposed to be the biggest threat in this movie and potentially in the second movie, and he's just not that threatening. Like, he's got a stern face, he's a little unpredictable, and he's into weird stuff. Seems like a pretty shoulder shruggy kind of guy. The fact that Korra does beat him at the end of the movie kind of implies he's not that tough. I do think it's cool that he gets resurrected at the end because all of our heroes now think the conflict is already over and they're about to get ambushed by the mother world and a still living Atticus Noble. It seems necessary given how easily Korra keeps beating all these losers from the mother world. It kind of makes me wonder like why we're so afraid of them and why the rebels can't kill them all. And if we talk about Belisarius for a minute, he is an interesting like cameo here in movie number 1. Again, he's a guy I'm kind of hoping to see more in movie number 2 because he took over the mother world after the monarchs died. His adopted daughter Korra was the one looking over the princess, presumably when she was killed. So I'm kind of like wondering if he and Korra were in on an operation to assassinate everyone, or if Korra witnessed her father assassinating everyone and that's what kind of like threw her out of the beliefs of the mother world. And I'm wondering like what his goals are that are so different than the king and the queen. Did he just want the power? Potentially he could be an interesting ultimate villain, and it would be really interesting if he came to these outer reaches to deal with the issue personally. We don't necessarily get any hints that that's what's going to happen in number 2, but it feels like going to the Mother World or bringing the fight to Belisarius is going to be necessary by the end of these 2 movies. So then moving into how the good guys are kind of like meh. I'm really mixed on Korra's overall presentation. She looks the part in the trailers and she has some like cool scenes even within the movie, but I keep looking at her actions, her place in the story, her backstory, and it's not like meshing together to make a cohesive character. Everything she does and says feels really random. Her dialogue is incredibly stilted. Anytime she has extended talking on screen, it feels so uncomfortable to me. Korra literally has no chemistry with anyone on screen. Her and Gunnar are so awkward when the 2 of them talk together. Her and Sidri, the leader, very awkward. Her and the old man who's sort of taken on like a sort of adopted fatherly role in the village to her. Also very stilted, long pauses, weird. The closest she comes to like natural conversation is between her and Kai. And that's because Kai is so personable, has so much like exuberant energy. He's like able to roll off how stilted and weird and off-putting Korra is. And like I think if Korra's character was intentionally just supposed to be awkward and weird, that would be fine. But she has these long extended scenes talking about feelings and what she learned and her experiences that are obviously supposed to be like connecting moments, minimally between her and Gunnar, but sometimes between her and like the old dude who found her on the grain planet. And I do not feel connected. I don't think those are bonding or understanding moments. In fact, a lot of times I think what she's saying is complete gibberish or is contradicted by another scene further down the road. Moving into Gunnar, he's Mr.
I don't have a side, only this community.
And yet he can't seem to stay out of the conflict when the society has decided how they're going to handle it. All of that kind of implies to me that he had ambitions beyond the community and that he was more than willing to step into waters he didn't understand. To be fair, of most of the characters, Gunnar does get a little bit of an character arc, and I think he's one of the few actors on screen who's actually allowed to act. I enjoy that he originally is very timid and freezes up during things, and eventually he finds his courage and what he really cares about, is willing to sacrifice himself for children in the case of Nemesis, or for Korra's chance to fight when they have that final scene. Next is Kai. I guess he is a good guy, secret bad guy traitor. Again, he's kind of fun to watch on screen. I'm sad that he's not going to be joining us going into part 2 of Rebel Moon. But even though he was like really fun to watch, he tells his real feelings to Korra after they meet up with the Blood Axes. And then from there, he like does a quick heel turn from being like,
Everything is hopeless and I have no idea why you guys are fighting,
to
I'm gonna join your cause and I'm a good guy now.
And Korra watches this and for some reason buys into it, even though Kai has shown no interest in their cause. And not only does she buy it, but even though they're on a time-sensitive mission, she agrees to let him stop and drop some stuff off. And because that's like the dramatic arc of Kai is he's surprise villain, it sort of ruins all these things that are like charming and endearing and were working well as a character blend for me. Next is Tarek. I understand that collecting these characters is like part of this Seven Samurai sort of vibe, a movie I've never seen, so I can't really adequately judge. But like, it's like little checkmark boxes. When they first meet Tarek, he wants to join them. The only issue is that he can't because he's like a slave. And I don't know why they're willing to risk their own freedom to get Tarek. I get he's a muscle man, but that's all they know is that he is shirtless muscle man. They learn that he can also tame beasts, but since they don't bring the griffin with them, like, I don't know how that's value added to their party. We're talking about like a floating ship in the sky that kills everything, so I don't understand how like adding one more dude is gonna help you with that. And Tarek, other than the fact that he's shirtless and can talk to animals, has literally no personality. Then we move into Nemesis, who thankfully has a little bit more personality than Tarek does. I was still super disappointed that we took Nemesis and not the Spider-Woman. That Spider-Woman seemed like she would be a flippin' awesome person to have with us. I don't know why we couldn't have brought her along. Nemesis comes so close to having a really cool line. She says,
Do not celebrate this. There is no honor in this. This could easily be any of you lying here in the gutter in the name of revenge.
Except that little end part, in the name of revenge, makes no flipping sense. That doesn't seem like an anyone could be in this spot kind of scenario. Revenge is like a specific choice, okay? Or doing something terrible enough that someone would want to get revenge on you, also a very specific choice. It hurts my feelings though, because the line is so close to being cool. Nemesis is so close to actually being a character, but she just is not there yet. Next, we move into General Titus, and guys, I thought we were going to find him because he was coming with an army. Why do we need a Master General? We don't need any one person. We need a whole army of fighters. And even here, where we're at like number 3 in the fighter lineup, that is definitely not enough people. The Titus scene is the lamest one so far. Korra gives what I guess is supposed to be an inspiring speech, and it's stilted, it's awkward, it's full of cliche, nonsense dialogue, and for some reason that like inspires Titus to join them. So flippin' weird. We do not know enough about these characters or what they've survived, and we don't know enough about like the vague things they're talking about for any of this to matter. Then we get to meet Deborah and Darren Bloodaxe, and they're the rebels with an actual army. They're really the only people we needed, the 2 of them and their whole flippin' army. Everyone else is like extra. And of the 2 leaders, Darren is the one who is willing to help the farmers. Deborah is the smarter one who's like, we would die if we did that. Although arguably Deborah probably could have come up with some kind of surprise plan for these farmers. But what Darren wants to do is just go there and make a last stand to die, as far as I can tell. He says,
Who is willing to die for what we believe rather than hide behind it?
which sounds really cool until you stop and think about it. Because first of all, a suicide mission literally helps no one. And it glorifies a purposeless death. Also, it implies that the rebels are hiding behind what they believe instead of fighting for what they believe. Which if they were hiding, I don't think anyone would be coming to root them out. They must have taken some action at some point in time. It's just another example of random gibberish that's in the movie to sound cool, but doesn't really mean anything. This movie's start is so flippin' slow. First of all, there's like a 2-minute exposition dump that I'll talk about in a minute, but we spend so much time on this generic farmer world with little to no science fiction elements. It's devoid of charm. I think we're supposed to be getting attached to this community, but I'm just kind of bored by it and waiting for the thing that was promised to me in the trailer with the last stand against the mother world. And we're 40 minutes in before like anything even kind of interesting happens in this movie. And even then, it's just Korra beginning to expo dump her backstory. But since we know that Korra comes out alive and fine, there's only like so much tension that you can have for that. Which rolls me into the next thing that's bad here, both the exposition and the incredibly stilted dialogue. I'm putting them hand in hand in the same basket because a lot of times the dialogue is the exposition dump. Now there is literally like a random monologue spoken by like a narrator in the sky about the mother world, the monarchy, and the overthrow for Belisarius to become the regent. This is 2 minutes long. I think it's here so that the movie starts the same way Star Wars does. But unlike in Star Wars, where you can not read the scrolling text and just jump into the movie, I feel like you kind of need this opening scroll. The problem here is that the information given in this first 2 minutes is not accurate and doesn't give you the important information. And I know this because we rehash it at least 2 more times, I think 3 more times. The next time we get an exposition dump is 7 minutes in, where Korra explains that she has been away from the mother world for 2 years and she doesn't know what love is or if she can ever love again. Part of it is how incredibly awkward Korra's delivery is. It's like slow, monotonous, voiceless. Part of it is like it's super cliche, generic stuff that I just don't care about and am never going to care about. And another part of it is like it's just exposition telling me more things when you could be showing me them. And another thing is this thing about about love and how the mother world stamped it out of her is not even flipping true, because the mother world encourages her to take on a lover and partner to make her feel more invested in battle. So the mother world totally understands about love, partnership, and connection. It's just they happen to utilize it as a tool. So the words she uses here are the wrong words. The reason she might be afraid to fall in love or to pursue a husband or whatever is entirely different than what she says. So then 26 minutes in, we get another 3 minutes explaining about the king and queen and the princess and how they were slain by the robot guy. And he does a much better job than the opening top, but it hasn't even been a half hour and we're getting exactly the same exposition we had at the top of the movie. And then again, at 40 minutes in, Cora gives her whole life story in an exposition dump that again explains to us about the mother world, the king, the queen, the war. This is 3 times now within an hour. You've more or less given me the same information with a little bit of personalization on it. Cora says that she's only telling us this so we know who she is, but I don't feel like her backstory informs who she is or what she does going forward. Also, I think it would have been better to reveal this in bits and pieces across the movie if we reveal it at all. Like, Cora is really playing the mentor Obi-Wan Kenobi role here, and I think maybe leaving that mysterious. Like, we just have to trust her and go with it, and we can tell by her competence, the way she moves, all this other stuff, that we should be listening to her and following her. We don't need her to, like, give us a resume ahead of time. There's also this really stilted conversation between Gunnar and Cora, where Cora, like, commends him for stepping in to help the child, and how not many people are kind like that. And Gunnar's like, well, you stepped in to help Sam and save her from that rape without any hesitation, which is not true. It took her a comedically long time to decide to turn around and help her friend. But their whole conversation about kindness in general is just terrible. Cora says this cliche bullshit about how kindness is a virtue worth dying for, and that's like how she tries to live her life. But was that how she tried to live her life when she decided she was gonna run away from the village before the mother world destroyed it? Was that how she decided she was gonna live her life when she attempted to kill Belisarius as a kid? Is that how she attempted to live her life when she decided to kill all of these other worlds because her lover died in battle? Nothing about Cora up until now has shown that she gives a crap about kindness or even values it at all. And then lastly, I just want to talk about a couple of weird scenes that make it really obvious Zack Snyder made the rated R movie first, and then he like cobbled together some kind of PG-13 movie with scenes that don't actually line up or make any sense. Or maybe he's just not telling a great story here. I guess I'll have to wait for the R movie to say that definitively. But for example, when the Admiral comes down from the mother world, Sidri, the planetary leader, greets him, and Gunnar like makes signals to him, or like Gunnar looks to Sidri and signals back to him. And since there's nothing establishing a friendship, the only relationship the two of them had was sort of antagonistic when they were discussing what to do with the mother world people. Why Sidri looks to him for reassurance, why the two of them are communicating back and forth during this exchange in front of the Admiral, makes no sense. The only reason I can think that you would have incorporated those scenes into this PG-13 movie is that they have weight and relevance to them in the R version that we don't get the context for here in the PG-13 movie, and you were too lazy to reshoot what you needed to film so that you would have had a seamless PG-13 experience. The scene where Cora is planning to run away and the old man she's living with confronts her about it is very awkward and stilted. Like, we haven't seen a relationship between this old man and Cora except that the old man found her and let her come into the farming community, and he's trying to play it off like that's a big deal, but we really haven't seen that from him. It is just weird to me that Cora's running away. It's weird to me that if she's running away, she's not taking this old man with her. There were ways to make this feel natural, with her like begging him to come with her being like, I could save you the way you saved me, like all these kinds of things. But instead, she's very cold shoulder, she's very brusque, and the old dude is like angry, like she's betraying a relationship that they had, but there's no relationship established. It's another one of those scenes where I believe there's got to be more context for it in the R version, and they kept this moment in because it was the one that depicts Korra prepping to run away, but they got rid of all of the context where this doesn't just feel like a weird insert. And then the extended rape scene where it takes Korra so long to decide to intervene is very awkward, and it's off-putting to me because Sam is a character that, as it stands in this PG-13 movie, is like a naive, cheerful girl who's kind to people and exists essentially to be a prop for rape and violence to change our heroes' minds. She is able to change 3 heroes' minds. She gets Korra to stay and fight. She gets the private and the robot on board too. But that's another reason the scene is so incredibly awkward in the movie, because we see the private change sides and we see the robot change sides. He picks up arms after he's vowed to pacifism, right? And there's no follow-up on that. There's no conversation between Korra, the robot, and the private. There's no like, I'm gonna train these people and I'm gonna guard them, or like anything like that. And they don't come with Korra on the journey, even though one of them or both of them is like the logical people she should bring because they'd be prepared for other scenarios. It's yet another scene I'm hoping there's actual context for in the R version of the movie. Maybe we like actually go back and forth between the farmers like growing the grain and prepping like for a attack where the robot and the private are there helping set that up. Or maybe we even just get like a single line where they establish what they're doing and why they're staying versus Korra going and retrieving help. And there's a scene that I sort of like in the movie, but I don't think needs to exist in any version of it, where Atticus is doing drugs and there's like the tentacle monster sort of like there with him, and one of his underlings comes in and announces that they have a bounty hunter that they can talk about to find the rebels. But earlier we watched that bounty hunter capture that dude, presumably to bring him to the general, so he does not need to be informed about it. We can just cut to the scene where the general is interrogating this dude. This whole middle part, it just feels like there was no editor and no one was like,
hey, this scene doesn't need to exist, or something else meaningful needs to happen in it to justify its existence.
And likewise, when they do catch Korra and Kai pulls Gunner aside and is gonna have Gunner be the one to kill Korra, that's really weird to me too. Why is the Atticus allowing this? Like, shouldn't he be the one who wants the honor to kill Korra? In fact, he probably should not want to kill Korra. He should probably want to bring her back alive to Belisarius. Something that Belisarius confirms in the end of this movie. But it's so obvious it's something that Atticus should already know and have in his back pocket. The other thing about this is the whole like capture device, the fact that like this will kill the person, but the same device, turn it this way, lets them free, feels like a design flaw. And I know that's like a very CinemaSins nitpicky kind of thing for me to be talking about, but here's the issue. Like, the sets have so much thought and care, and the costumes have so much thought and care put into them. And then the actual devices, mechanics, and things happening are so carelessly thrown together in this movie that it kind of like blows my mind. And it ends up getting me like stuck on these little bits and pieces because I'm really rooting for this movie. I want things to be happening that are interesting and engaging, and it's not coming together. And these little moments are like showing all the ways that the team just let itself down and like fell flat in places that were key important to get right. So closing this review up, even though Rebel Moon Part 1, this PG-13 version, is objectively what I would consider a bad movie, I can't say that I dislike it because there's so much potential in it that makes me so hopeful and happy to see it. There's something about it that's likable and that has like this element of like passion and care and quality put into it that makes me want to like it. And it makes me want it to be good, even though I can't recommend it as it currently stands or objectively say that it's a good movie. But talk to me. Did you watch Rebel Moon Part 1? And if so, are you going to be watching Rebel Moon Part 2 when it comes out? Let me know in those comments down below. And as always, keep reading.